me then sort of first of all say welcome to you all. I understand that there's been a press conference this morning from the Court of Auditors. I also understand that I have been this has been portrayed to me as being quite, how should I put it, maybe some emotions, but also sipping through. To me, the most important thing with the review we have of Court of Auditors is that we can get good and constructive feedback on the activities that we're doing, and if they're pointing out something that is actually not, that we can actually improve, we take this extremely serious and making sure that we incorporate that into what we're doing and make sure that we continuously improve this institution. Again, let me remind you that the Court of Auditor report was focusing on the very turbulent first year of operation in 2013. What the Court of Auditor report has done is to form an opinion on three things. They have looked at the compliance of BMC versus the legislative frameworks that were in place when it comes to BMC. They have also looked, of course, as the other institutions and frameworks around that, but I'm not going to comment on that. The second topic they have formed an opinion is around the efficiency of our operations. And the third one is the cost effectiveness. Let me just sort of then point out that they have not taken a view on the overall effectiveness of BMC. That is, did we actually achieve the ultimate goal of making sure that we made our part in terms of enabling a recapitalization of the two most important banks that actually were in such a shape that it would be highly questionable if they were allowed to continue operation entering into 2014. That has not sort of been part of the scope of the Court of Auditor report, and I think we would have liked to have seen that also being audited, because I think that is actually the ultimate judgment if whatever money has been spent for good use. So let me then return to what they have looked at, and as I think you all know, you have been able to be informed that they have formed a negative opinion on all these three assets. We have a very different view on many of the things, and I think as a documentation after this press conference, you will be given basically our response to basically this report. We were given the opportunity to respond to a final draft. We did so. We have some 18 pages where we basically very clearly state sort of our point of view, and there are many things where we have simply different points of view on things. If I highlight a few things, and I'm going to do that because I think it's appropriate, because it's just sort of, they have formed a basis of their opinion on a number of things, and I do appreciate that they have a mandate and a scope that they have to fulfill when they do so, but they also, I would say that they have not really taken into account that in 2013 we were a startup. Simply put that, we had a very difficult time, and things were changing for us, not due to ourselves, but as if due to external factors that did cause some challenges for us in terms of overcome. So, some of the things that has formed the opinion of the Court of Auditors is that we, for instance, failed to establish a bank stability fund. Now, this is clearly said in the law that there is a potential for us to do so, and we should do so, but it's intended actually for the situation where we, BMC, would recapitalize the banks, i.e. we, instead of the government, would have paid in the cash that was used to recapitalize the banks. That would have meant that we would become the owner of the banks, and those equities should be dealt with separately from the other assets we are managing, and therefore you need a bank stability fund. That's an accounting entity, not a legal person, but it's an accounting entity in order to recognize those assets separately. We failed to establish this for the simple reason that we did not do the recapitalization of the bank. And we also failed to do a strategy for that, simply because we didn't own the banks. So, although we did not comply with the law, which says that we should, I think there is a very good reason for this. Also, we failed to sign contracts with the bank which might outline the valuation of transferred receivables in more detail. That is correct, but again, if you remember, and I think this has been made very clear, we did not have access to this information, and it was withheld for us for a long, long time. We also failed, according to BMC, to adopt a job position systemization charge in 2013, despite that we, at the end, actually had more than 10 employees, and as you know, there's a line there driven. We did add the last employees at the very end of 2013. Perhaps we should have waited to actually employ the people until we done a renewed active systemization, but we felt that we actually had an active systemization for the whole organization, which we intended to populate over time. So we felt we had the documentation that we actually needed for operational reasons in place. We have a different point of view with the Court of Audit if that is sort of what they would require from a more legalistic point of view, but it's again a different point of opinion. We also failed to define both the qualitative and quantitative measures for the remuneration. I would argue very strongly that it would be good practice to actually know what assets you own and what you think you can do with the assets before you put in place any remuneration which is based on variable pay. But again, the remuneration policy said that it should be in place. We felt it's more appropriate to actually know what the assets were and what we think we can do with them before we set targets that are then linked more to reality. We've been also, I would say, it has been pointed out that we did not follow the public procurement when we, for instance, engaged consultancy firms, 2 consultancy firms, a human resource agency, a law firm, and a travel agency. We have both internal and external legal opinions saying that we were actually exempt from this, and for practical reasons. If you may know that the public procurement process takes quite a long time to actually do. So there is a clause in our law which basically says that we are in some cases exempt. We had to understand if we can actually operate, and we were given legal opinion saying that we could operate and actually set up our operations within a time frame. We did so, and the Court of Audit has a different opinion in terms of if we were actually had to follow the public procurement process, which, as you know, takes actually months in order to actually do. So again, this is a difference in point of view. By now we are, of course, in another situation, so we can do things differently, but we are referring to the startup phase in 2013. Yes, there's also been failure from our side to incorporate and actually sell 10% of the assets in 2013. That is of course correct, but again, it doesn't reflect that, the assessment doesn't reflect that we got the assets only 10 days before the end of the year. And there's also been commentary around that we did not incorporate selling 10% of the assets as part of our financial planning in 2013. I would argue that it's not good business judgment to think you can sell assets before you get them, and even plan on using that money before you actually know that you can get them. So we did not do that, but it's been pointed out that that is not fully compliant with the regulation, and also not efficient operation, since it would be more efficient if we can use that proceeds, of course. So there has been a number of these, I think, bases. You will have the full documentation around this actually in this 18 pages, where we try to actually be very clear. This is the opinion of the Court of Auditors, and this is where we see our view. And I think based on that you can make up, I think, your own mind actually in terms of what we actually did and how we did that. So I'm not going to go through all of that, because I think there is enough discussion around that already. What I'd like to basically conclude with is that there is also a very helpful list of things that the Court of Auditors like us to see within 90 days to have implemented. That is, of course, a lot of it is related to the policies that is required for us. It is based on the situation and the lack of some policies as is viewed in 2013. We are now in 2015. So we have now, I think, 29 policies which are covering the points. And I would say that I see this part of the report as a very helpful checklist to understand if there's anything that we haven't covered by our policy making right now. So we will see that and make sure that we report back very quickly that those so requests from the Court of Auditors have now been covered, and was done actually quite some time ago by now. So I think that is to sum up from my side. We see a review like this very seriously. We take it constructively. We want to make sure that we improve. We are an institution which will continue to evolve over time. So timely and good constructive feedback we will welcome every time. We find it less useful when there is sort of more, when some of these reports are, I would say, for some reason leaked and then used to confront us with some negative things, and we have to deal with that. That is actually not helpful in terms of improving this organization. But we also know that this is part of the game, so we try to respond and be as transparent as we possibly can with you in order to take this forward. So with that, I think I leave it open for questions.
Okay. Debata, izvolim.
Slovenščino, Martin Venkovič Popove. En ključnih očitkov strani računskega sodišča je to, da sama DUTB zahteva oziroma je dala oznako tajnosti na večino dokumenta, večino drugih dokumentov zraven in enostavno predlagajo, da vi umaknete to oznako. Zanima, kakšno vaše stališče, nameravate to umakniti, da nekaj pravijo, da bi s tem pojasnili večino stališč.
Kaj predlagate?
Računsko sodišče predlaga, da pravi, da je banka sama, slaba banka postavlja oznako interno oziroma tajno na večino dokumentov in da preprosto umaknete to oznako in da bi s tem rešili večino problemov nejasnosti.
Are we referring to the Court of Auditor report as such? Okay. Well, quite frankly, we received this report yesterday. It has been speed translated during the night, and I have not been able to review this in detail in order to actually see exactly what we can do and so on. So we have to come back with that. In terms of our transparency overall, transparency is sometimes referred to as traceability, i.e. can decisions be traced and are they fully documented. In the first year, we had to sometimes take decisions which are, they are fully documented, but of course you could have done it much more, and if you had a procedure for how you do it first. We have to start from scratch basically and build it up. So there is certainly some of these things we have improved vastly since the very beginning of 2013. When you do an assessment like a startup, if you would take the assessment point 3 months in, or you do it 9 months in, 3 months in you would see basically very little. I mean, by that time we might actually have internet connection. Yes, we'd have. But 9 months in, we still will not be comparable to an institution which has been functioning for 10 years. So that is one of the things here. It is not that we're trying to hide things. Sometimes we just have to make sure that we get things done. Now, when it comes to another aspect of transparency is, can we give out everything to media, to the public at all points in time? No, we cannot, because then we destroy values, and we are here in order to optimize values. And I think if we were giving out basically what are the accepted price for us selling a certain asset, that would clearly destroy value for us as taxpayers. And I am a big taxpayer in this country, so I can say this. So we are trying to be as transparent as we can, but we still have to make sure that we are not compromising basically our overall task here. And this is sort of, I would say, a balance that we have to strike, and we continue to become better at that, but that's one of the things. And some parts of this report might actually have aspects which are going to be kept confidential. Some service suppliers request certain things to be confidential, otherwise they would never like to price quotes, for instance, are usually something that any competitor would like to have as something between you and the party involved, not something that is in the media. But we try to the point that we can be as transparent and we can. And I think we are actually more transparent than other state-owned entities, like the banks, for instance.
Če smem dopolniti temu, kar je gospod Mansson povedal. govorimo o poslovni skrivnosti, se pravi o oznaku poslovne skrivnosti. Se pravi, mi smo označili tiste dokumente oziroma tisti del dokumentov, za katere smatramo, da za njihovo razkritje bi lahko nastala škoda poslovnim partnerjem, pa lahko tudi DUTB samemu. Potrebno je pri tem poudariti, da vsi dokumenti, ki so bili dostavljeni računskemu sodišču, so bili dostavljeni v celoti, brez kakršnih koli prikritih podatkov, seveda z oznako poslovna skrivnost, vendar poudarjam, brez kakršnih koli prikritih podatkov. Ko pa nas vprašate glede stopnje zaupanja, ki nosi sam dokument, se pravi poročilo računskega sodišča, to je pa stopnja zaupanja, ki je mi kot DUTB nikakor ne moremo umakniti, kot govorimo kot celote, kot dokumenta. Seveda pa poudarjam, da tisto, kar je prikrito, tisto smatramo kot poslovno skrivnost. Sama stopnja zaupanja, ki jo nosi dokument kot celota, pa ni v naši domeni, oziroma odstranitev tega ni v naši domeni, govorimo o stopnji zaupanja dokumenta. Deli pa so tisti, za katere smatramo, da je poslovna skrivnost, vendar za pojasnilo, torej v celotnem postopku so bili vsi dokumenti dostavljeni brez kakršnih koli prikritih podatkov. Vse to pravi, računsko sodišče, to poudarjam zdaj, računsko sodišče je prejelo strani DUTB-ja vse podatke brez kakršne koli prikritih podatkov oziroma detaljev. Ne vem, torej mi smo povedali, kaj je za nas, se smatra poslovna skrivnost, vendar mi smo morali računskemu sodišču dostaviti vse podatke in tako smo tudi storili, ne da bi kakršnekoli podatke za to prikrivali. Pravi, jaz tako, kot vam pravim, tako sem tudi pripričan, da smo to naredili, oziroma da so naši sodelavci to naredili. Je pa res, da nisem na vseh dokumentov posebno videl.
Naslednje vprašanje, TV Slovenija.
Jaz bi kar konkretno šel po očitkih računskega sodišča. Ta vam očita, da je pač negativno mnenje dalo zaradi tega, ker je bilo naročeno storitev v vrednosti... Računsko sodišče očita, naročene storitev v vrednosti 1 300 000 evrov ni bilo izvedeno skladno s pravili javnega naročanja. Nekaj ste sicer že omenjali, da je vaše stališče razumevanje zakona drugačno kot računskega sodišča, ampak kljub temu bo verjetno treba upoštevati stališče računskega sodišča zdaj naprej. Ali je to zdaj urejeno za nadaljne pogodbe, me zanima? To je prva zadeva. Druga so svetovalne pogodbe.
Opustite, pardon, mečken, prosim, ker ne morem.
Se pravi, Na prvo, ali je za naprej zdaj urejeno, domače povedano, naročanje storitev po pravilih javnega naročanja? Ok, gremo potem zgledati za nazaj za zunanje svetovalce v skupni vrednosti 3 milijone evrov, da ni DUTB ocenila ponud pred sklenitvijo pogodbe, ni spremljala samega izvajanja, pa tudi, da se ne da za nazaj preveriti, koliko od teh storitev je bilo sploh izvedenih. No, toliko za enkrat.
I think I understand what you're referring to. Should I start, Alish, and then you compliment? Yes. So, when it comes to the public procurement process, I mean, we are in a different situation right now. First of all, I think the most important thing from our point of view was, did we acquire these services professionally in the best interest of the EMC, and did we have a professional way of evaluating the offers, making sure we had enough offers to make sure that we chose the one which provided the most value for money. And there I would say yes. We spent considerable time with the board, in the board, and making sure that those processes were done in a professional way. Did we follow down the public procurement process which is defined in the Public Procurement Act? We had a legal opinion, and we still have the opinion that we did not have to do that in 2013. We can argue back and forth who is right and wrong, but the fact is that it refers to 2013. We cannot redo basically what we did in 2013. So there are 2 points of view here, and we can spend a lot of time on debating that, and I'm sure we will. And as long as we get clarity in terms of what we can do and also what pace we then can operate under going forward, we will be happy to make sure that we do that. So I think that is one of the areas where we actually see a follow-up in order to make sure that we, as a board, then revisit if we need to do any changes. We have talked about this for a year since 2013, so I think we're in good shape as we are right now. So I would leave it that from a business point of view, we are sort of past what happened in 2013. When it then comes to your second question was related
Svetovalne pogodbe, da se jih ne da preverjati in da niste ocenili ponudb oziroma predsklenitve pogodbe.
Well, we did assess different offers, and we have clarified this a number of times, I think, with both CPC and the Court of Auditors, and I think they have chosen not to take what we have actually provided them as facts, and that's very unfortunate, because we can only provide them what we actually did and how we did it and do that, and then if they then take a different point of view if that was done or not, we cannot sort of influence their assessment of that. We did this in a very professionally good way, and we make sure that we actually manage those situations in a way to get it as much out of it as we possibly could. Now, things did change for us, so we had to change course a number of times during 2013. And that is, of course, causing, if we had known that from the beginning, we could have done things very differently, and we could have done it cheaper. So I think we have made an estimation that these changes costed us all 3.1 million. And if I'd known from the very start that in the end we will only buy the assets in December, which is, by the way, the plan we had done for the, and that is the first briefing I had with the finance minister at the time, how long would it take for us to build up an organization sequentially and then acquire the assets, and when do I actually think that this can be done by doing it from a more internal driven way. That time frame said that we would buy the assets late in 2013. We ended up doing that late 2013, but it was then based on that we had to be ready to do it first in end of May, end of June, then there was a delay, then there was a change of scope in terms of us not buying the equities of the banks, and so on and so on. So, you know, with perfect hindsight, could it have been done more cost effectively? Yes. With the knowledge that we had at the time, did we take the decisions that we felt was the best business decisions at the time? With the, you know, having in mind the overall objective we had in front of us, yes, we took those decisions based on the information we had, and we think they were the best decision we could take at the time. So this is a difference of perspective again, and being judged after the fact, not taking into account the context that we were operating in, you can come to one conclusion, and we coming from basically the situation we were, and we have explained that quite extensively by now. And this is where we are.
Še kakšno?
Če smem samo dopolniti,
ja.
tudi temu pozval na začetku. Kljub zelo
Lahko mogoče samo mikrofone še k nam dal, pa da še vas postane.
Pa če se preseže.
Ali pa če se preseže.
Malo takole.
Bo bolj.
Tu mogoče prevrati.
Si bom zelo nakratko.
Musical chairs,
Če smem samo zelo nakratko dopolniti to, kar je gospod Mansson tudi do sedaj povedal, da kljub turbulentnemu letu, kljub zelo specifičnemu letu 2013, si upam trditi, da je DUTB spoštoval vse postopke v skladu z dobro prakso in da v vseh tistih postopkih, ki se je seveda glede na objektivne okoliščine dalo, tudi spoštoval zakon o javnem naročanju in na tem zakonu tudi kar nekaj postopkov speljal. Seveda tisto, kar pa morda danes kot ugotovitev strani računskega sodišča je drugače od našega mnenja, je seveda to, da mi še vedno trdimo, in tako je tudi mnenje določenih torej ljudi, ki so pregledovali postopke, da so nekateri postopki izjema zakona o javnem naročanju in se jih lahko seveda pelje tudi drugače. To pa ne pomeni, da se jih pelje mimo postopkov, se pravi dobre prakse in skrbnih gospodarjev. To pomeni, da smo za vsako naročilo bodisi storitev ali pa materijala pridobili 2, 3 ali pa kjer se je dalo tudi več ponudb in seveda na osnovi teh ponudb se potem odločali za storitev ali seveda za ostale, se pravi, dobine materijale. Se pravi, če izhajamo iz tistega, kar je zapisano v računskem sodišču, je bilo rečeno, da so odvetniške storitve eden tistih zadev, ki smo jih drugače peljali, kot bi sicer po ugotovitvah računskega sodišča morali. Zdaj, iskreno povedano, zdaj v tem trenutku pomagajte mi, katere so tiste storitve, še ki so del poročila. Potovalna agencija. Zdaj, ker se same potovalne agencije tiče, je tako, da v bistvu, ko govorimo o javnem naročanju in preseganju določenega praga, ki je zakonom predstavljen, seveda govorimo za storitev in za znesek storitve, ki bi presegale ta prag. Potovalna agencija za njeno storitev je prijela v letu 2013, mislim, da 2000 evrov. Se pravi, to je tista, predvidevam, da razlika, ki jo je seveda v okviru svoje storitve sebi zaračunala kot zaslužek. Ostalo je seveda strošek letalske karte, se pravi, torej pomeni letalska karta s kreditkom. Tako da, ko govorimo o Sončku, res ni bilo javno naročeno, vendar Sonček kot tak ni zaslužil tistih zneskov, ampak je zaslužil znesek, ki je bistveno nižji od tistega, kar se zakonom zahteva, se pravi javno naročeno. Tako da...
En ključnih očitkov se nanaša na to, da ni možno preveriti, ali so bile, ne samo način naročene, ampak da se ni možno preveriti, ali so bile storitve, ki so bile najetne, ki so bile plačane, sploh izvedene. In da v večjih primerih niso bile. Ne samo, da se je podvajalo stvari, ampak da enostavno pač ni možno preveriti.
No, to seveda kategorično zanikamo. Vse storitve so bile ažurno, torej preverjene, so bile spremljane, vsa poročila in specifikacije so tudi del materialov, ki se nahajajo seveda na računskem sodišču, tako kot je bilo v skladu z procesom tudi z naše strani izvedeno, se pravi, dostavili smo materiale, dostavili smo specifikacije, dostavili smo seveda pogodbe, ki so vsebovale vsebino storitev in seveda na to tudi poročila. Je pa seveda res, da določene storitve jih je težko opredmetiti, niso vse materializirane, se pravi, težko najdemo za to produkt, nekatere so tudi seveda čisto svetovanje pri dnevnih operacijah, so razgovori, so razne vrednotenja, ki so bila v okviru sestankov na bankah narejena s pomočjo takrat sogovornikov na eni in na drugi strani in niso vse seveda opredmetene.
Tu razumemo, se štekamo, kaj so storitve, kaj so svetovalne storitve, ampak tako, te dokumente ste videli, so bili dejansko, pač ko prej ste omenili, da jih niste videli. Zdaj me zanima, če lahko nekdo od vas potrdi, da je videl te dokumente in da so predani pač računskemu sodišču, ki dokazujo, da so bile te storitve dejansko izvedene.
Seveda, ja. Seveda, vprašali prej, kar ste rekli, da nisem videl v odgovoru, se pravi, kolegici, ali so vse bile prekrite ali ne.
I can also add to that there is, if you buy, for instance, consulting services, there is one approach where you buy a report and you get a report and you get a specification of the number of hours spent preparing that report, and then it's very easy to document that to a court of order that we have the report, we have here the specification of the number of hours that the consultancy put in order to provide that report. Quite frankly, that's the very old-fashioned way of working with consultants. More effective news is actually to make sure that you have the resource in place, that you form joint teams. You can, for instance, have joint teams even for different service providers in order to make sure that you assemble a team that is the best team in order to achieve the task. That can be a report, but also quite often it can be preparing a decision that you take in board. But it's not a report as such. It is a number of interactions, there's a number of ways to form an opinion in order to make sure that we are moving ahead and taking decisions in the board in the best possible way. And that means that it's not sort of a document that a court of order can sort of say, this is the one and you pay this much for that and that's it. It is something different. It's much more of a providing of external support for actually driving an internal process, which we had to do given that we had to build an organization and execute at the same time. Now the way you manage that in the best possible way is to make sure that you manage that team in the best possible way. The oversight and the management of that happens as you lead any organization. It doesn't really matter if it's an external consultant or it's employee you have internally, and you mix that. And that we did. And we thought that is actually even a better way than afterwards looking at specifications of report and saying that we can check basically that these numbers were, we know they were here because we saw them, not because that we have a documentation saying that X number of hours were put on that. So that's a little bit of a different of approach. It is of course more easy to audit when you have the approach which is normally, people write a report and you have a specification of how much you're billing. That is, auditors does it that way. It's sort of easier, it's more understandable. But we work in a different way. And it's actually I would say, a very recognized way of actually working in a better way than the more old-fashioned way. And I have some experience in actually being a consultant for a very long time and being managed well by clients that way. So I would say that practice is very good. We also criticize for instance, having services which were overlapping. So there was concerns around us having in these engagement lectures the same task for different service providers. Well, again, of course you would have that situation if you actually set up joint teams. You're working on one goal and one task, and of course then that will be reflected in both the engagement level from Cooper and from courts, for instance. So you can take the stand that this is very suspicious because you seem to have two different people doing the same thing, so of course it wasn't deliberate. But if you actually try to understand how we did things, there are very, very good reasons for why it looks like it does. So again, we have different opinions here, and we believe that what we've done has been done in a very professional way.
Še kakšno vprašanje? Najprej delo in potem gremo dami bo zadnji. Okay.
Glejte, računsko sodišče je med popravljalnimi ukrepi navedlo tudi uskladitev pogodb z neizvršnimi direktorji s plačno politiko. Se pravi, in me zdaj zanima, kakšen je zdaj vaš odgovor, ali boste spremenili politiko plač, vemo, da se bo tudi vlada s tem ukvarjala jutri. Kakšen je zdaj vaš odgovor na to politika plač?
First of all, this reflects for 2013. And I think, as I remember, one of the key concerns was that we did not incorporate the variable components into this severe. Oh, sorry, it's the non-executive. Non-executive. Okay. Maybe you should answer that one, yes.
Ja, seveda, tako kot rečeno je ugotovitev leto 2013 te zadeve v skladu z veljavno politiko plač so bile oziroma bodo urejene, in mislim, da se vaše vprašanje oziroma ugotovitev računskega sodišča predvsem nanaša na odpravnine.
Konkretno piše med popravljalnimi ukrepi, ki se navaja, da so naslovljeni na vrsto, piše uskladitev pogodb z neizvršnimi direktorji s plačno politiko. Potem pa tudi nadzor nad izdatki neizvršnih direktorjev.
Ja. Spravi, še enkrat, jaz mislim, da se nanaša torej, na tisti del, ko govorimo o odpravninah, in to bo usklajeno. Kar se pa samega pravilnika tiče o povračilu stroškov, je pa seveda tudi pravilnik v letu 2014 sprejet in se tega pravilnika v 2014 tudi držimo, kar se tiče politike povračila stroškov za neizvršne direktorje.
Je to to?
I do think that coordination also refers to the implementation of variable, both fixed and variable remuneration in the contracts. And I think I explained that up front, saying, or earlier on, that since we didn't know the nature of the assets, the complexity of the assets, or if what we could actually do with the assets at the time, to set the quantitative target and incorporate that into the remuneration didn't feel appropriate, given that it should really have a sound anchoring in reality and be aspirational in terms of what you can achieve, but not sort of be, you know, too easy either. And the only way to do that is actually to know what you manage and make an assessment of what you can achieve with that. And then you can set an appropriate variable target. So again, we had the access for 10 days legally. We didn't know the files yet because they were in beginning to be transferred over, and to set the remuneration policy already in 2013 that incorporate that, I would say that would not really be a professional set variable target.
Najprej zade, zdaj kar vrsta, tako da prosim.
Čeprav pač javno naročanje lahko pač podaljša razreda, zagotavlja boljše ponudbe. On so stroški delovanja narasli na 14 milijonov evrov že po nereguliranem poročilu. Pač, mislim, kar lahko dokazuje, pač, da zapravljate preveč mogoče.
Okay, so again, I mean, there's a procedural way of doing it according to the Public Procurement Act, which is important. It's an EU-wide legislation. It does open up, and it does usually result in that at least some of these tenders you would have appeals, and it takes time before you can implement. That is a reality that we have to deal with in the situation we're in. Given that we actually had a view saying that we were exempt from these things, we felt it would be inappropriate actually to then launch a process which we know would basically then stop what we had to do. So this is, again, the only thing we can do professionally is to make sure that we felt that we got offers in that provided the best value for money. To me, I don't think that the actual process around that is the important thing. What caused some of the, I would say, extra cost was more the change of, should we call it, directions that we had to adapt to in 2013. So I would say that that is, to me, quite clear, but I know it's also been debated. We are also proposing, I have to say, we are proposing to get further exempt from public procurement in the new legislation that is being addressed. And it comes to simple facts like, if we are to become, which we will be, a major real estate owner, we own a big complex, there is a main water pipe that breaks. Since we are now a public entity, we had to go through public procurement, we could not even, if we had to follow the rules exactly, have somebody come in and actually do a major emergency reparation, if we were to be too precise in that. So I think even in the new legislation there is some attempt to actually remove certain aspects of real estate management from public procurement in order to make sure that we can protect the value of the assets we have. So, public procurement is very important, but it also has some drawbacks, and we had to take that into consideration when we try to actually do things in the early stages here. Yeah?
Če smem samo dopolniti, govorimo o stroških poslovanja. Zdaj, stroški poslovanja se nanašajo tudi na stroške sodne taks, stroški notarjev, ki so v te stroške poslovanja všteti, zakaj pa seveda ne obstaja javna naročila. Res je, da so v teh stroških poslovanja všteti stroški določenih storitev, ki so bili že večkrat predstavljeni, pa tudi razlogi za najem teh storitev večkrat predstavljeni, vendar je treba jasno poudariti, da večina stroškov poslovanja nikakor ne morejo biti predmet javnega naročanja. Torej, večina tiste, kar je vsebovano v stroških poslovanja, ne more biti predmet javnega naročanja.
Naslednje vprašanje, Torbjorn.
En očitek je, da se pojavljajo nepravilnosti pri porabi sredstev, in tudi pri neizvršnih direktorjev, da se recimo sami pišejo potne naloge, pa prejemo, da so odkrili precej nepravilnosti, tako v zvezi s taksi, s prevozi, s hrano, nekaj takih smešne očitke.
Zdaj, sami si potnih nalogov seveda ne pišejo. Torej, dinamika sestankov upravnih odborov je vnaprej napovedana, termini so vnaprej napovedani, govorimo o datumih vnaprej napovedanih za naslednje 2-3 mesece ali celo več. Se pravi, ve se, kdaj bodo neizvršni direktorji pripotovali v Slovenijo, koliko časa bodo v Sloveniji preživeli in kdaj bodo iz Slovenije odšli. Tako da morda je to odgovor na to, ali si sami pišejo potne naloge ali ne, ali si sami ne pišejo. Ko govorite o očitkih, da so si za čudne zadeve zaračunavali, se pravi, v okviru politike povračila stroškov so seveda priznani tisti stroški, ki so del te politike. Vkolikor seveda niso, se pač odbije od upravičeno povračilo stroškov. Zdaj, na konkretno jaz težko odgovorim, pa vendar sem trdno prepričan, da je bilo to v skladu s politiko in da je bil strošek upravičen.
Tudi Slovenija?
Ja, vse kaže, da se bo pač vlada oziroma policija odločila zamenjati neizvršne direktorje. Zanima me pa zdaj predvsem, ne vem, mogoče, če je že kakršnakoli komunikacija z vladne strani z vami tudi bila glede tega, predvsem pa glede plač. Nekako računsko sodišče meni, da bi bilo najbolj, da se plače uskladijo z Lahovnikovim zakonom. Potem tudi koalicija včeraj že dejala, mislim, da predsednik SD-ja, da bi bilo najbolje, da je najvišja plača v rangu predsednika države, potem pa z določenimi korekcijami se še da popravljati zadeve. In zato sprašujem mogoče izvršnega direktorja prav, je za tak denar še vedno pripravljen delati tukaj in ima to kakšen vpliv na delo?
Or did you ask if I want to be the president of the country? I mean, when it comes to remuneration, simple fact is that there is a when it comes to me, my personal situation is that I was asked to come here by the previous government, and I agree with the salary with them, which is approved. If there is now a change of government and they have a different view of the type of remuneration policy, I respect that, and I also then have to sort of take into account then what the decision is and personally what that situation means to me. That is sort of what is market-based salary. And I would say, from a personal point of view, I think it's a little bit sort of difficult from a lawmaker perspective or a populistic perspective assess what type of compensation is required to attract somebody who can be successful in a job like this. It is never going to be easy to do that from a political standpoint. So I can say the following, I will make sure, I mean, I'm very committed to make sure that this is a success. I of course have to review any changes in remuneration from a personal point of view, and I have my own government at home, not perhaps allowing me to do this just for fun. My family is still in Stockholm, so, and I do actually have offers for doing something else, which is paid more even compared to the current rate. So I of course have to take sort of an individual decision around that if there are to be changes, but I don't want to comment on that until I actually see it, but I would have to review it. And quite frankly, I've had the opportunity and be very lucky enough to have had success in what I've been doing, which meant I've been remunerated, and also I have made more money than the Premier of Sweden for quite some time. And I still don't want his job either. So I do what I do, and I try to do that as best I can do. I'm sure I would be a complete failure as the President of Slovenia, so I would certainly not be earning whatever the President of Slovenia is doing, because I would be a really lousy job at it. I do what I do, and that is what I like to be compensated for. And to compare me to the President or to a nurse, which are also extremely important assignment, but it's sort of comparing apples and pears in that sense. I am not here for being here until the end of the mandate, if it's going to be extended to 2022. I see this as a time-limited effort, and after that, I think this can be brought in line with what you would compensate a more normal, I would say, real estate company, which we in the end will become, because a lot of the collateral will be real estate, and it takes time before that gets sorted out. So over time you would see a normal shift in terms of the type of people you'd like to attract, keep, and stay, and over time there will be an adjustment in that, but at the time we're still not really there yet. So I'd like to make sure that they have the opportunity to stay on and make sure that we deliver on what we intend to deliver.
Pogovori potekajo. Are there any conversations with the government about your salary?
Maybe I should actually refer that to the chairman, who has actually done the person who is having that dialogue. Sorry for that.
We are certainly discussing with the government, with the Ministry of Finance, on what let's take that. We are certainly discussing with the Ministry of Finance and the government how to proceed from here with the company. And I told the minister in October, when he's taken office, that we need to develop the board of this company. We need to proceed, given that we are what we're going to do during the year to come and the year after will gradually change, as Torbjorn has explained. And certainly in 2-3 years this will be a real estate company like many other asset management companies are. But we need to go on until, well, at least for another 2 years to see that we are finishing up the job that we are doing at the moment. And I have great reason to assume that the government has the same interest as we have in order to make this a continued success.
Naslednje vprašanje.
Ja, Tomaž moj dnevnik. Gledam na vprašanje kolega, koliko je trenutno zaposlenih v DUTB in kolikšna je njihova povprečna plača? Pač lahko tudi brez individualnih pogodb, oziroma z vključenih s tem.
Oh, the average salary, I actually don't have that number in my head. We are by now 85 people.
86.
Sorry, 86. There we go. And I actually don't have the average salary in my head at the moment, so if I give you numbers, it'll be wrong.
Redno zaposleni, vsi vključno z individualnimi pogodbami. Mislim, ali je to zdaj redno zaposleni, ali vključno z individualnimi pogodbami?
There is a combination. There are certain individuals who is defined as employees with a special nature of work, that has individual contracts.
86 je številka vseh zaposlenih.
Mislim pa se da
dobiti, če zanima redno zaposleni, pa potem honorarni.
Mislim, ne konkretno mislim, ker če bo pač vstopni davek od dohodnikov, zakon bo to vezano na prejšnjo plačo.
Pravim, 86 je številka vseh zaposlenih, se pravi pogodba po zaposlitvi, ali individualni ali kolektivni, ampak redno zaposlenih s polnim delovnim časom.
Koliko je pa potem še teh raznih SP-jevcev, recimo za odnose z javnostmi, vidimo, da je zelo dobro plačan, pa potem še kakšen bi se najdel. Nisem sklepam iz tega.
Ne težko bi se še kakšen našel. Se pravi, to je podatek iz leta 2013 in mislim, da kar se tiče se pravi podatkov o zaposlenih SP bi pri tem tudi ostaja. Se pravi, da mislim, da v letu 2015, da je samo ta oseba poslednja. Če sem kakšno napako naredil, se opravičujem, ampak mislim, da govorimo o osebi mogoče dve, ampak ne verjamem. Mislim, da sem
Tule vprašanje.
Ja, hvala se. Je že kolega.
Aha, ok, potem pa imamo Pop TV, potem pa Planet.
Večkrat ste omenili pač zdaj, da bo DUTB postala nepremičninsko podjetje, nepremičninska agencija. Pred časom ste vi sami govorili o nujnosti podaljšanja vašega mandata. Zdaj so izpostavili eno od vprašanj, sicer ne leti na vrstno, ampak vaš pogled, tudi če ne bo prišlo do podaljšanja mandata. Ko imate kakšno sodelovanje z SDH-jem, slej, ko prej ne bi se stvari, če se ne podaljša vaš mandat, prenesli na SDH. Zanima, kakšno sodelovanje s njimi?
So, the direct question, no, we don't have a deal with SDH at the moment for them to become what you're referring to, the legal successor of the BMC assets if we were not to be extended. I think right now we have had a number of discussions with this government and also the previous that it is the intention of the government to extend the timeline. We are still operating as, making sure that we are operating as we would, but we haven't prepared for, should we call it, legal transfer in that sense, because that would happen at the end of 2017. It's a little premature. But even this year, it's important to actually know, because we have a refinancing coming up in the end of December. We have one bond coming due, it matures, and there are better means of actually finding, if needed, a refinance solution if we have clarity around the lifespan. It's of course easier to refinance something when you are known that you will have assets in the balance sheet until 2022 than compared to 2017, because then everything has to be lined up for 2017, which is not really a good situation.
Izvolite, Planeti, vi?
Ni sicer neposredno povezano z poročilom, me pa zanima, nedavnega ste imeli odprto zbiranje ponudb za nakup terjatev. Kdo konkretno se zanima za nakup grepa in pa kakšni so očitki se oblikate?
So, on that specific case, I don't want to comment on that right now, because there is interest around it, and that's an ongoing process. But if I if I answer more generally in terms of the interest, I was, how should I put it, positively surprised about the seriousness and the level of interest that we received when we tested the markets for the assets we have. So, and we needed to do so because, quite frankly, we have to dimension also what we do in terms of the exit side of things, and we have to understand basically what can be achieved during this year, also for our financial planning going forward. And I was positively surprised about, I think, the interest both domestically and internationally on actually investing into Slovenia and the assets we have here, which I see as a very positive sign and indicator. When it comes to specific cases, can't really tell you right now, sorry.
Še kakšno vprašanje? Če smo jih izčrpali, lepa hvala za pozornost, za pogovor in se vidimo naslednjič.
Ja,